Space Hulk versus Gloomhaven. Making that decision. That's what we're going to look at in this board gaming vlog. The ultimate question, right? You're thinking about a new title. You're thinking about a new acquisition. And you want to know, beyond just the rules. The rules are easy. You can watch lots of videos. You can check out blogs. You can download PDFs and understand the rules. But the rules that capture the narrative, that capture the player experience, that's the challenge. Because we ask ourselves, if I buy into this system, if I buy into this game, Gloomhaven, if I buy into this lifestyle, is it going to hit the table? Am I going to play it? Is the group going to like it? Or is it going to sit on my gaming shelf taunting me every time that I play it? And this question leading into this vlog was built around this idea of a dungeon crawler experience. Space Hulk is set in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, man versus alien. There's this idea that there's these derelict spaceships. You're sending in space marines to do various missions, recover tech, and fight gene stealers, fight the aliens. It's essentially a dungeon crawl sci-fi in space. Gloomhaven, so much has been said about Gloomhaven. It's a dungeon crawler, leveling up, sci-fi campaign type game. Very immersive, very, very massive. So at its core, and I know I'm simplifying things a little bit, we're talking about dungeon crawl in space or dungeon crawl fantasy. So that's kind of the first perspective before we get into the rules and the narrative and the setup and having that place. Looking at your collection right now, are you heavily loaded on one side or the other? Perfect example, Zombicide, that whole series. I've got Modern, I've got Black Plague. I really enjoy playing those. I'm done. I did not need to add another Zombicide type game, putting Massive Darkness aside. I didn't need to add that to my collection. But when they released Zombicide Invader, I know I enjoy the rules. Well, it's a sci-fi zombie game. I don't have many sci-fi titles in my collection. So that's one of the reasons, that's one of the main reasons why I went ahead and acquired that for my collection, because I've only got maybe 5 or 6 sci-fi based games. If you're heavily loaded on the fantasy type dungeon crawl, maybe that weighs Space Hulk as sci-fi. If you go in the exact opposite, maybe you've got all sci-fi and you want to go into fantasy, maybe that weighs towards Gloomhaven. So we have to look physically, what's the composition? What's the composition of your collection? Second aspect, the visuals. The visuals of Space Hulk are better than Gloomhaven. Space Hulk, fantastic miniatures. Games Workshop pushes out amazing miniatures. They're form-fitting. You could paint them. If you don't paint them, they still look fantastic. The Hulk itself, the corridors and the tech, the cardboard is thick and heavy. It's 3D printed, so it's a little bit raised. There's a lot of great detail. There's lighting effects on it. The components are all very thick and heavy. The dice are premium. Space Hulk looks amazing on the table. Gloomhaven, based on its nature, is functional. You've got miniatures for the character classes, but the monsters you fight, they're cardboard standees. Nothing wrong with that, and I understand that decision. The sheer number of monsters that you fight in Gloomhaven, to do that in a miniature format, that's going to be like $500 or $600. It's going to be through the roof. So I understand the diversity of having the standees. There's also tons of tokens and conditions and counters and cards. It's a massive, massive, massive sprawling type game. Where Space Hulk, the miniatures are simplified in that here's your Space Marines and here's your Gene Stealers. And of course, there's a variety of poses and equipment and war gear. But visually, Space Hulk wins out over Gloomhaven. Tabletop size and setup. This is an important piece. I love Gloomhaven, but Gloomhaven is the type of game, and this is kind of public domain knowledge. Gloomhaven's the type of game that you could, but you're really not bringing it to the gaming club to play for a few hours, unless you have an amazing storage system. And even then, setup time, playing, breakdown time. Gloomhaven's kind of like Kingdom Death Monster in my collection. I set it up, and myself solo or invite my friends over, we play it for a month or two, and then we kind of step back for a little bit. So it's the type of game that It's not one and done. You don't just kind of casually set up and play. Again, nothing's stopping you, but the sheer number of components and stacking the encounters and getting everything ready and sorting, it's a lot. Now, Space Hulk does have some setup time because you flip through the mission book and you have to set up the Hulk itself, the space dungeon, and some of them are very big. There's a lot of components. Some of them are multi-level. Fortunately, there's a lot of diversity in that some of the Hulks are a little bit smaller, 3 or 4 rooms and some corridors. Some are very, very big. The advantage Space Hulk has, not only in setup time, but play is very fast. Play is very fast, very furious. Space Hulk is the type of game that you could take with you, set it up in 10, 15 minutes, roll some dice, blow some stuff up, do that little sci-fi dungeon crawl thing, and then put away, no problem. Everything fits in the box. So just on that alone, on that feature alone, that is pretty significant. Gloomhaven is a commitment. Space Hulk is something more that you can just play and enjoy. Campaign feel. Now, Space Hulk is mostly tactical. I mean, there is a lot of tactical play in Gloomhaven, different setting, different mechanics. But Gloomhaven is about the campaign. It is about the discovery in that you have a map and you put stickers on the map as you unlock things and you follow up on leads and you unlock character classes. There are ways to play one and done dungeons, but it's about that experience. Space Hulk has a campaign in that there's a story to play through, but for the most part, you can pick the different missions and play them separate, play them independent. Is that a good or bad thing? It really depends on again, hitting the table and what you're looking to play from that perspective in terms of utilizing it. The rules. The only thing I would say about the rules, and again, we're like trying to build this checklist to match with your player personality and your board gaming style and layer that over your collection. And videos on YouTube go into the rules more. Space Hulk you can pick up in about 30 minutes. It's pretty straightforward. It's tactical. There are a couple of conditions like Overwatch that give you some interrupts and ways to save actions for later. Gloomhaven, there is a significant learning curve. It's not insurmountable. It's not Magic Realm, but there is somewhat of a learning curve, and there's a lot of conditions to remember and sometimes a lot of things to potentially track and deal with. Not a criticism, just knowing what's going in. The last piece, and this is last because it may or may not be a consideration, Space Hulk is man versus alien. Humanity versus the unknown. So the game is set up where one player controls the Gene Stealers, the aliens, and one player controls the Space Marines. There is no solo play. There is no AI. It is head-to-head, 2 players. Now, you could, and I've done this, played 4 players, where you have 2 being the alien player, and you each kind of take your own side of the board. And I've had 2 players, 10 Space Marines, you take 5, I take 5. I mean, you could do that, but it is made for 2 players. It's not co-op. It's not Overlord-based. There is no AI. There are house rules out there. You can play it solo with some modifications, but that's not its selling point. That's not its strength. That's not what it does outside of the box. Gloomhaven can scale up multiple players, and Gloomhaven itself, the AI dictates the game. It's a co-op game. And by that very nature, solo is built into it. You could sit down and play Gloomhaven completely solo, and it's the same experience with a group, although with a group there's a little more collaboration. That could be an important piece based on the fact that Gloomhaven, you can play it no problem by yourself. You can explore it with a group. And based on the campaign narrative, it's very easy to slot characters in and out. I mean, I have an ongoing Gloomhaven campaign that I sometimes play solo, and friends jump in with their own characters and kind of help every now and then. Actually, we've got 3 Gloomy campaigns going. We got to make our way through before Gloomy 2 drops. Space Hulk, you can play solo only with modifications. And that does take a little bit away from it, because certainly a lot of the game is baiting with the aliens and attacking with the aliens and knowing when to attack. You lose a little bit of that. So depending on the physical composition of how and where and when you play board games, that might influence it. So that was my response, where it's like, let's build this checklist, because they are at their core both dungeon crawlers, different approaches, sci-fi versus fantasy. What's in your collection? What'll get to play? And based on your player personality, what are you feeling? What are you more feeling to play?